Welcome to the Go Virtual Career Readiness Conference. My name is Alex Becker. I'll be your room host today. Just a few things before we get started. For those of you that do need verification that you attended this, I will be posting a slide with the certification for you to take a screenshot or a photo, and you can share that with your administrator. I'll also be sharing an evaluation in the chat at the end, and we'd love to hear your feedback about the session and about the conference as a whole. So please fill that out. And then lastly, we are recording this session. We're recording all sessions at the conference. Just a heads up, we wanted to let you guys know that. So again, thank you for joining us today. With us, we have the amazing Vanessa Light and the Illumina team, who will be having a panel on Illumina and some of their career pathways and resources. So without further ado, I pass it over to Vanessa.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's career panel. As Alex said, my name is Vanessa Light, and I work at Illumina, and I lead our STEM education program development. So for those of you who don't know what Illumina is, it's a life science company located in San Diego near La Jolla in the UTC area. So we're excited today to partner with the Office of Education. They've always been an incredible partner with us through our STEM education programs and the work that they do in connecting us to all of you and to educators around the county. So one of Illumina's largest philanthropic focus areas is STEM education. And by partnering with teachers like you, we can work to achieve our goal of inspiring students to become the next generation of innovators, engineers, lab managers, and the other types of jobs that we have at Illumina. And it truly wouldn't happen without the impact and influence of teachers. And I think that each of our panelists can attest to that with their own teachers. So we know that the word genomics can seem like a really big word and a really intimidating word, but it's a lot of simple things that are put together and truly are the building blocks of life. And so, Alex, if you can actually share that, the slide that we have, I'll give you, while you pull that up. So next week, I just wanted to highlight, next week, we're going to be hosting an industry speaker series for educators. And our VP of Product Development, Ashley Van Zeelen, will be talking about COVID-19, how Illumina has impacted that research, and then also talking about a little bit about her background, and we'll be talking about some of our educational partners that teachers can take advantage of. So I'll add the link into that chat once our panel gets started, but I just wanted to give a little shout out to that. It is a free event. It's for educators. It is, again, at 4 o'clock, so hopefully it doesn't interfere with your in-class time, and hope to see you all there. So before we begin, we'll be taking questions at the end, so please feel free to ask questions. We have an incredible panel today, and so I want to make sure that we squeeze everything out of this, this panel that we can. And so if you can just put the questions into the comment box on the right hand of your screen, we'll get to those at the end. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. We'll start with Michelle. So Michelle, if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of move along to Dana and then Travis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Stevenson. I am the lab manager for the research organization at Illumina. I've been with Illumina for a little over 10 years. I've been born and raised here in San Diego, so this is my hometown. But I do have labs throughout the world. Our global campus is all over the world. So yeah, I love what I do, and I'm excited to share some insight with you today.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Dana Lucas. I am a manager in our global supply chain planning department at Illumina. I am originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so East Coast, grew up on the East Coast for most of my younger years, and then recently relocated out here to San Diego about 2 years ago. So I'm still relatively new to the area, and have really been enjoying exploring what San Diego has to offer. So my educational background is a little bit more non-traditional. I don't have a degree in a genomics related field. I'm actually my background's more in communications, and I have a minor in business. So I think we'll talk a little bit later in the panel how that's helped fuel my supply chain career up to this point, and how that's fit into Illumina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Travis, and I'll give a quick shout out to both Dana and Michelle. I work as an engineer too in research and technology development, and I could not do my job without either of them doing theirs. What I do at Illumina is help design fluidic systems for our sequencers. I'm originally from Fountain Valley, California, so about an hour and a half or so, depending on traffic, up from San Diego. And I got my bachelor's in engineering not too far away either at Harvey Mudd College. And I focused there on sort of like the interface of biology and engineering. And I've been at Illumina for just over 3.5 years now. And they've all been great. So happy to talk today about my experiences.
Awesome. Thank you all. So I'm going to kick it off with a handful of questions to each of our panelists. And again, then we'll move on to your questions. So I'm going to start with Michelle. Michelle, you've been at Illumina for over 10 years, as you said, and in a variety of roles, both as a scientist and a lab manager. Can you speak more to your experience shifting from a primarily scientific role to more of a manager role?
Absolutely. So when I joined Illumina, I was part of the protein engineering group, which at that time was a very small group. From the very start. It had 3 people in it, including myself. Me being the most junior role in the group, I did take on a lot of the setting up of the lab and the organization. I was a scientist at that point, worked with the group for I think 6 years, five years. And did that dual sort of role. As the group grew, I really took a liking to the role I was taking on with sort of the lab management. And that's kind of how I went in that path. I still enjoyed the science. I actually found it extremely valuable, especially with Illumina. I was able to really understand the background of all of our platforms. And the inner workings of our sequencers. And so that has helped build on my knowledge and ability to do the role that I currently am in. Probably about midway through, I decided to make that shift into the sole lab management position. While I still enjoyed the science, I wanted to be have that more contributing role to the wider organization. And so I thought that with my skills and what my strong suits really was in this lab manager type of role. I decided to take that on and really develop it. At the time within Illumina, there wasn't really any defined lab management roles. So it was kind of unheard of to have this sort of position. And so I was able to really sort of get that going and get that started to have it as a defined role that really enables all of our groups to do the things that they do best in the labs. We are a group that it's a service group, but we enable our scientists. We don't want our scientists to have to take the time to figure out how to ship something internationally or to buy something that's, from a supplier that's not within our supply chain. Lots of different things. And so we take, on that responsibility so that the scientists can focus on the scientific work and being innovative.
Awesome. So I'm going to move to Dana next. And since you're a newer employee at Illumina, well, at least compared to Michelle's tenure, how critical is it to have an educational background in genomics or in a specific science area to get a job within your area of supply chain?
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. So at least for my particular background in supply chain, I would say it's a little bit less critical to have a genomics background, but and I think at least in my particular case, my background with having worked in supply chain related to like forecasting, inventory planning, looking at, how much supply we need to carry at any given time. That helped me a little bit more, I think, in transferring some of those skill sets to my role. But I would say that prior to Illumina, I worked for Lowe's Home Improvement for about 6 years in Charlotte, North Carolina. So that was definitely working in like a very big box kind of retail environment. And then before that, I worked for an apparel company. So I had a completely different retail focused background. So I would say that, at least for me personally, I think some of the learning curve to transition from a store kind of customer facing role to a medical device company, I think definitely there was some learning curve there. So I think having at least some foundational background in genomics, in biotech kind of related field, and understanding a lot of the regulatory type of implications that apply to our products would definitely be helpful in this industry as it relates to supply chain.
Okay. Thank you. So over to Travis. Some people know what they want to do from a very young age, and this is just my opinion. It seems like you have known that for a very long time. What influenced your interest in becoming an engineer, and what kept you curious through that path over the years?
Yeah, so I think I came to engineering in sort of a roundabout way with an interest in biology growing up. I think, like a lot of people probably, was very interested in like marine biology as a kid, and sort of just kept that interest. A funny story I like to tell about sort of like Travis as an early engineer is I was really into fishing along with a marine biology interest. And I used to make money by buying broken fishing gear and fixing it and reselling it when I was like a preteen and like early teenager. So that definitely introduced me to like the tinkering aspect. My dad basically is the type of person who refuses to buy furniture and builds it. So definitely got some influence there. And then sort of the biggest one in terms of what I do now, when I was 16, I was actually sort of underwent this like Diagnostic Odyssey, which is like this buzzword you hear at Illumina a lot, related to a heart condition I have. And one of the ways that they narrowed down as to what it was a genomic array. So that like really opened the doors, because previously I'd sort of looked at engineering as just sort of building things that, exist tangibly, like a car or a road or, a building. But that really opened the door to how you can use engineering in the field of biology. And really ever since then, I've sort of just, I don't know, kept an open mind and tried to just seek out things that were, ways I could contribute using those, like, I guess, tinkering skills that I developed when I was 11 or 12.
Awesome. Okay. And that's an amazing connection. I knew there was a connection. I didn't know what it was just from looking at your LinkedIn. So that's an amazing connection. And I think just from a sentiment that I hear from a lot of different employees is that the connection to the mission of what we do at Illumina is the reason why most employees are so passionate about what we do as a company. It drives our innovation. It drives our perseverance, and to know that there is opportunity to change the world around us with what we're doing from day to day is really something that is in the ethos of Illumina, and it brings together all of our employees and our customers. And so just as a plug for kind of understanding what it's like at Illumina. So the next question I have is for Dana. And so often students think about roles within a supply chain as working at a conveyor belt or shipping items, very tangible things. And since our audience is educators, some of those things that we want to do is to demystify some of those assumptions. How does that misconception differ from your day-to-day job? And are there any other misconceptions that you would want for our teachers to share with their own students?
Yeah, really good point. Supply chain is definitely a very vast field of various roles for sure. So I always try to equate it to something we can all relate to, which is perhaps something like, a cell phone, thinking about all the different things that had to go into getting this phone into our hands, right? Onto the shelf in the store or to the online retailer that you purchase it from. So that really starts, all the way upstream with someone actually having to come up with a forecast for what they think, our customers are actually going to purchase when it comes to the instruments that they use to run sequencing or the chemical reagents that they have to use in those sequencing runs. So we actually have a forecasting team at Illumina that partners with our sales and commercial department and really comes up with a plan of what we think customer demand is going to be. At Illumina, that's really challenging because our products are so innovative. We're always raising the bar every year with coming up with new product launches. So sometimes, determining what we think that demand will be is very difficult. But my role basically entails taking that forecast and developing a supply plan. So being able to say, based off of that forecast, how many instruments do we need our manufacturing team to build? Or how many chemical reagent kits do we expect to be shipping in the next 3 to 6 months? And so then there's going to be a team also in supply chain that has to order the raw materials, and they have to account for the lead time that it's going to take to get those raw materials from our suppliers to Illumina. So you may have heard during COVID-19, there were quite a lot of disruptions in the supply chain. I'm sure a lot of us felt that when we went to our local grocery store and couldn't find toilet paper and paper products and some of the other things that we really wanted. Also, even companies like Apple reported, having shortages on iPhone components and other things because those are coming from overseas. So we have a team in procurement within supply chain that handles all of that. We also do, of course, back to your point, Vanessa, about the conveyor belt, we do have a team that has to work in our warehousing and distribution areas to, once the finished product has been manufactured, they have to store that, they have to ship that to our customers. So they're working on securing transportation routes, making sure we have enough space on trucks, planes, etc. So we have a whole entire scheduling team that has to deal with that. So there are, hundreds of roles actually within supply chain at Illumina. Mine, again, just being one of them, but definitely not just limited to, like you mentioned, kind of boxing items and, putting them on a conveyor belt for sure.
Okay, thank you. It was so helpful to understand that process when Dana shared that with me of just thinking about the forecasting and fulfilling that, hopefully that can be a little bit of an aha moment for our educators as well. Just a nice way to describe it to students. So Michelle, my next question for you is, how would you suggest these teachers share about learning to be a lab manager with their students? So many of their students are, scientists, and they think that is a scientist sitting at a bench, and kind of that misconception, or that's one option for a scientist. And so, that's my first question. And then also, do you need a certain level of higher education to be hired into this lab manager type of role?
Okay, so I'm actually going to start with your second question first. My educational background is in science. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in molecular biology, so that is my original forte, as you would say. I did work as a scientist for about 15 years prior to coming into this role. So having that scientific background was very, very helpful in moving into the role that I now have. As far as with lab management, I did move on to get a master's degree in biotechnology management. While I don't think that is absolutely necessary, there's definitely certifications and things that are quite useful for this role. You would want to pursue things in operational excellence, have knowledge of supply chain, things like that, in order to assist with you becoming successful in a role like this. I would say that this role, definitely you want to have that scientific knowledge. It really, really helps in having that understanding of what your groups are that are working in your labs, what they're doing, and not only to understand the importance of it, but to really understand from their perspective their needs for their projects that they're doing. So, you know, we have a large role in safety within our lab spaces. So as a lab manager, if I am not understanding of the science behind that or chemicals, having that understanding, basic underlying knowledge of science, that will sort of hinder that in that aspect. So you definitely want to have that scientific background. So to go back to the first part of your question, you have students who are, you know, in these scientific roles, and that's what they want to pursue. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. I kind of feel like I'm sort of in that bucket, right? I pursued a degree in science and wanted to go that route, but slowly found that while I was good at my job, that really wasn't going to take me to the heights of my career that I wanted. So this was more of something that I fell into and that I fell in love with as far as what I'm doing. So it's kind of like, and Vanessa, you and I spoke about this the other day, it's kind of, the analogy to this is kind of being like a store manager. So perhaps a lot of these students have jobs in retail or things like that, but they love the science. This maybe is sort of a mixture of that. You have these labs that kind of are like your small business or you know, a store that you have to run, and you're running all these different aspects of it so that the business or the store is successful. So if you have people who love the science, but maybe they're not completely strong in that, or they don't find the opportunities that they want to pursue, this is definitely an alternative. For me, it's a very fulfilling alternative. I love my job. I love that I get to enable the scientists and the science. Yeah, so that's definitely something that teachers can share with students who are in this field as an alternative, you know.
Awesome, thank you. So to you, Travis, what is the biggest misconception about being an engineer?
Yeah, great question. And I really like the word you used earlier, demystifying. So I'll start with the biggest one, which is frankly that engineering is inherently a male-dominated field. We need to squash that idea. Every major significant mentor that I've had in my engineering pathway has been a woman. Both my faculty advisors in college, Mrs. Barrow, who is the teacher in high school who introduced me to the field of biomedical engineering, my current boss, my favorite person to look up to in the RTD organization, Candy Roger, who Michelle works with quite a bit as well. Michelle herself. That's a big one. It's a huge problem that exists at pretty much every stage from, you know, early education up through industry. It's not going to go away overnight. Past that, I would say having to be a math whiz. I'm not going to say I'm poor at math or I was a poor math student. I enjoyed math. My mom was a math major. That was a huge, you know, bonus and advantage I had. But engineering is about creativity and solving problems first and foremost. When I use math equations, I have to look all of them up. None of them are remembered, despite all of the tests I took and no fact sheets or whatever. There's almost nobody who has any of those memorized. And then the last one I like to push back on is that engineering is a more technical field than it is like a collaborative or like a people-focused field. I think Illumina is like in particular great at this, in that you're working with a different, huge amounts of people from different backgrounds, and you're not doing your job unless you're, talking with people, talking with potential customers and people who use our products, and able to communicate effectively. And that's, I think honestly, like the big thing I always tell, students if they're in high school or college, is just like, don't ignore the, those soft skills, because it's a huge difference. And I think goes a long way in sort of creating a more open and creative and collective environment as well. So.
Thank you. I love all those, especially the first one. So I am going to ask actually all of you, just so that the group can get to know each of you a little bit better personally. But so I'll let Michelle start, and then we'll go to Dana and Travis. What do you do outside of work? What are you passionate about? What is your why? What makes you tick? Michelle.
Well, first and foremost, I am a mom and a wife, and I have 2 sons, an amazing family. They are my drive. They are why I do what I do. My husband has a genetic disease, and so when we found this out after we had our first son, and having the background and knowledge that I have, I didn't want to have a second child that could potentially have this genetic disease. And so we went through IVF and did all the genetic testing and screening in order to have our second child. And so my family, they are the reason why I love working at Illumina, and I love doing what I'm doing. As Travis mentioned, there's always something that brings you back to our mission and what we do and what makes the work that I feel I do. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because I see the direct result of what our technology can bring to people. So that is my my why and what I do and why I come to work every day. They are my driving force. I love being with my family. We enjoy doing lots of things outdoors. Camping, of course, is one of our biggest things. I love gardening. I have a huge garden here at my house. And then when we are able to, unfortunately not during COVID, but my husband and I and my older son, we participate in archery tournaments. So that's a fun fact of something that I do. So
Amazing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Michelle. Really, that was really inspiring. Yeah, so I guess in my some of my, I think what drives me in terms of why I work at Illumina, I actually grew up not knowing my father. And I think every time, you go to get a physical, an annual physical, or now, anytime you go in for like a medical procedure, generally, the doctors are pretty good about asking you for your medical history. And so it's always kind of been a big black box to me in terms of, my father's side of the family, not knowing, could there be genetic defects, heart disease, cancers, things like that. So that's always something that I think, has inspired me to work at Illumina, seeing that we can now sequence those things and really understand where we might have those genetic markers. My husband's actually the reason why I moved out here to San Diego. He found his dream job out here working for Sony PlayStation. He works on a video game, a baseball video game, which is really kind of cool. So that was a little too good to pass up. But really glad we made the move out here, because San Diego is just an amazing, beautiful place. Like you, Michelle, I love being outside. I love hiking. I also have a garden which has grown exponentially during COVID. It's been kind of a nice positive thing to be able to have fresh vegetables and herbs and other things at our disposal. And I also, when I moved out here, I started taking horseback riding lessons. It was something that I did as a kid and in college, and then I took a long hiatus. But there's a lot of equestrian facilities around here. And so I've been able to start that up again, which has been fantastic.
All right, those are both really tough to follow. Archery and horse riding. So first off, my wife and I have been in San Diego for 5 years. I think a lot of the things that Dana and Michelle mentioned are the same for us, hiking, etc. We don't have a family except for our lovable 75-pound dog, Zoe, who's passed out on the couch next to us. So dog parks, dog beaches, etc. are a big one for us. I mentioned the interest in marine biology ever since I was a kid. And I'd say if I have something I'm passionate about that I don't necessarily get to impact day to day with my job, but still love, is just the whole science behind the ocean management, as well as being in the ocean. I've been a lifeguard. I recently got my freediving certification. So I just, try to be in the ocean as much as possible. And I guess like a fun fact, crossover there, in the past couple years, Illumina sequencers have actually been used to sequence the bottlenose dolphin genome and the great white shark genome for the first time ever, which is a really cool tangential way that I can brag that I'm somehow in a very small way involved in marine biology. And yeah, I guess, yeah, I'll probably just leave it at that. I'm a big hockey fan. Not a big hockey community in San Diego, but that's okay. Yeah.
Awesome. So the reason why I wanted to kind of highlight that and have each of you highlight what you do outside of the office was for a specific reason. And so what I want to share, I'll share my screen really quickly, is I wanted to share our STEM education site. And so hopefully you can all see this, but we have, it's illumina.com/STEM. And so for our the teachers of younger students, we have a lot of different activities here, Genomics 101 at home, strawberry DNA extraction, but then we also have these Discover Careers in Genomics videos. And you can see these different, a genetic counselor, a clinical lab scientist, an AI and deep learning engineer. So all of these different jobs, and there's YouTube videos and they highlight these employees both inside of the office and outside of the office, and how their passions really drive their passion inside of the office. And also just to get to know scientists and engineers and bioinformaticians that's not all they do. And I would say at Illumina, for the teachers to be able to share with their students when we aren't in the world of COVID, we have intramural softball and we have intramural soccer and a massively competitive dodgeball tournament. So lots of fun things that is really supporting a whole person and a whole family. We have concerts for families. And so just, it's great to know that there are companies that are supporting each of these individuals and families and really allowing them to pursue different passions. So, you don't need to go to the Bay Area to work at Facebook or Google to find companies like that. So I think that that's really important. So I just wanted to point out those career videos, and each of them are paired with what's called a career card that talks about a lot of the misconceptions of each of those jobs. And so with that, let's take it to the questions from the group. So Alex, I'll let you ask the question.
Yeah, so we had a great question from Paula Ann. High schools now have pathway programs where they can focus on a specific sector and provide students a targeted education in a certain sector. And so she's asking about, so her school is starting a biotech pathway program and she wants to avoid common pitfalls. So from Illumina's perspective, what are some gaps or some great outcomes that you've seen in biotech high school programs? So I guess programs that you think are great, what are they doing? And then programs that have some pitfalls in them or some issues with them, what have you noticed are some patterns?
So I can take the start, and then I'll let the rest of maybe just even from a a newer employee perspective or kind of a hiring function. Maybe Michelle or and the rest of the group can answer. So I think the piece that that is missing a lot with programs is the real world applications, and to better understand, again, these small pieces of the building blocks of how we actually create our technology, but then how it can be applied. And I think one of the biggest, again, kind of aha moments for me is that the science and the technology is very similar time over time, and that it's the way that it is applied that that our customers are able to be creative with what are called field application scientists and their partners, and in order, by working with our customers, working with our employees, they're able to think bigger. They're able to kind of take their experiments and make them bigger. And I think that, by creating that ecosystem and that relationship within your classroom, it might help to foster that innovative thinking and collaborative kind of world that Travis talked about so much. And but just really understanding the science and then how it is applied in several different ways. And so I'll leave it at that and let the rest of the group answer as well.
Yeah, I would say, Vanessa, just to add to that, I think focusing on the business facing aspect of biotechnology and it's a big part of my role. Understanding, again, what is the industry trend looking like? What are we seeing? What segments of the business are we seeing grow? Are there, for example, like specific innovations in oncology segment that are outpacing the research and academic segments? That's, I think, a really important part of my role is understanding what that economic outlook is like, and partnering with our product marketing team, our sales and commercial team. They are really the face to face with our customers. And so, there's a whole business kind of focused aspect of a big biotech company like Illumina that probably is a black box. A lot of people don't realize that part has to go into it. I think we probably have a little bit better focus on the research and development and the lab and science applications of things. But I would definitely encourage that for biotech students, because it might be something maybe they're not aware of, or maybe they're thinking, hey, I'd like to pursue more of a business kind of role, but I like science, but I don't think I'm so good at, a lab kind of role. That would be, I think, something that would be helpful.
I'll piggyback off of that, Dana. That's a great point. I think that even for the non-science students, right, like before they make that decision to go into that sort of line of work, that it's not just about, being a scientist in a lab, working at the bench. There's so many different things that that you can do within the science community. So I think that's definitely something to present to them at a young age, so they see all the different options, I guess. And yeah, definitely to second what Vanessa said is to keep abreast on the current technology and applications, because that's key.
Is there time for me to add a bit to that, Vanessa?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Cool. One thing I guess this is, I know there are there are these huge amount of topics that teachers have to go over in terms of like the breadth of like something like biology or biotechnology. But one thing so my high school didn't have like a biotech pathway or anything, but those I know whose high schools did, that I really loved hearing about, were opportunities to let students sort of like narrow down into a topic, where I think a lot of people think of biotechnology and think they have to have a specific background in the field that they work in industry in their education. For me, I worked like arguably more on like the cell biology side in my first job and in college. And now I work like really more, I guess, heavily on like the mechanical engineering and design side. I think it's really just like showing that ability to like narrow in and like understand a biological concept that transfers really well to like other types of biotechnology industries. So yeah, and unfortunately wasn't my personal experience in high school, but I have friends who sort of had those programs, and I heard about them and I was like, dang, like that sounds so cool. I wish I could have narrowed down like that on, you know, just something you were interested on.
Awesome
and
responses.
I will say, so within, and we'll dive into this again on our session on the 21st, but we have a partnership with Discovery Education, and one of them is talking about a hospital. We have the lesson plans within that site. And one of the lesson plans that are all NGSS aligned, but it talks about taking a hospital from your typical approach to working within precision medicine. And it just helps to foster that conversation of what do you have as a hospital have to do in order to make that transition? And I think, you know, there's regulatory, there's from a finance perspective, there's all these pieces that go into something like that, that go into healthcare. And, you know, that is very outside of the lab, but I think it gives the opportunity for students who might be interested in business, but also science, to find that intersection. And there's such amazing opportunities, especially in San Diego being such a healthcare hub, that, you know, that might be another opportunity of just a narrative to be able to share and be able to kind of open their eyes to other avenues. So.
I want to keep the Q&A going because you guys are having some amazing responses. And we do have another question from Darcy. I am going to drop the eval in the chat, and I'm going to share my screen with the session certification to verify, because I know some of you are might be leaving to go to your next session. But in the meantime, I do want to provide you guys an opportunity to answer Darcy's question because it's a great one. So what she's asking is, we're entering that college application season, and students are thinking about, hey, I'm interested in biotech. What are next steps after I graduate high school? So she said for what she's wondering is specifically for positions at Illumina or in biotech in general, what are the different advantages, disadvantages, or career pathways for different degrees? So students might be considering a certification program at a community college, or should they pursue a 4-year degree or go to a community college for a couple of years and then transfer over? What are your thoughts on the different advantages and disadvantages of those paths in terms of different careers?
I can offer a little bit of advice. I think in general, Illumina, I would say at least for supply chain, we're typically going to require a 4-year bachelor's degree, and in some cases even an advanced degree, depending on you know, the area. But I think in general, with any 4-year degree, there are of course going to be general ed credits that I think can definitely be obtained in a 2-year program or a community college program. So I think for any student that's maybe not sure or is on the fence about, is the certification going to make more sense for me, or I'm really not quite sure if I want to pursue one sector or another, I think generally getting those general credits out of the way at a community college, and then with the goal in mind of transferring ultimately to a 4-year program, that would be at least my take on some of the observations I've seen, at least in some of the resumes and recruiting that we've done, more for the supply chain related roles.
And I can follow up with that. Yeah, I think that in general, that is a great rule of thumb, especially if you don't know exactly what you want to go into. I know from my own experience and several other people that I know that I started out in college thinking I was going to do one thing, and I've completely done something totally different, which of course required a change in my major, and you kind of have to backpedal a little bit and start over. But and I think that's okay. I think that things change, you evolve, you learn things about yourself and your likes and dislikes, and so I guess my one word of advice would be to be open-minded, and we're famous at Illumina for saying this, and embrace change. Embrace the change that you feel you can, say, no, you know what, I don't want to be a scientist. I want to go into, this role, or, that's okay. And you got to do what you're passionate about and what you love, because your job isn't, it's not going to be something fulfilling that you go to every day if you don't enjoy it and aren't passionate about it.
So I 100% agree with Michelle's open and embrace change. And I hope this advice comes across as in that spirit, even if it seems more like calculating. I think a lot of it comes down to, a lot of students applying to college, like some students might know exactly what they want to do and they might follow the path and get there. But to Michelle's point, a lot won't. I sure as heck didn't. But I think a lot of times, I only have I have a bachelor's and I work in engineering. I get a lot of recent alumni or about to graduate alumni from my college contacting me about grad school or not. And I think this sort of applies to the high school going into college decision as well. And a lot of it comes down to Michelle's point of like, what do those in the path you're looking at generally do? So I myself was very heavily considering grad school. So I just reached out to a bunch of engineers at different stages in their career and sort of asked like, hey, if I want to do this, do I need to go get a master's or a PhD? And in engineering, the type of engineering I'm in, the answer was no. And I'll also just say, in Illumina, in my group, the vast majority have bachelor's or an advanced degree, but there are definitely folks in our group who transferred and did their 4-year degree that way, to Dana's point. So I think any of those are really going to get you where you want to go. But in having like talked to high school kids about biotech, I think a lot of times they're just really shy to reach out to folks already in industry. And I try to always tell them, like, people like to talk about their careers. You're very rarely going to get someone to say no when you ask them about their career. So yeah, I think really just like matching the path and talking to folks. But I know, telling high school students that can be a bit of a losing battle at times. So.
Awesome. Well, I know that everyone has another session to head to. I'm going to give one more plug for our session on the 21st, because we will be able to dive into some of our education content and ways that we can connect each of your classrooms to different employees at Illumina, and do, the possibility of doing something like this for your classroom or classrooms. So I really encourage you all to attend that. And I really thank you to our panelists. You guys are tremendous. I am so grateful to work with each of you. And thank you to all the educators for your tireless efforts right now, and for embracing change and moving quickly as we do at Illumina. You guys are rock stars.